Today I've got lots to share with you, so grab your favorite beverage, grab your whip, and let's dive in. Welcome back, friends. If you are new here, my name is Melissa. I am the dyer behind Rising Tide Fiber Company, and today I am excited. It's been a few weeks. I wanted to sit down and share what I finished, what I've been working on, let you know how my retreat went. So let's dive into finished objects. So lately I have been trying to get things off the needles. December is coming. This is probably going to be the first year in a long time that I'm really working hard to set myself up for a nice, slow December for myself. So I have been trying really hard, particularly to get things off sock needles, knowing that the majority of my advents are socks. So first up, I did finish my Ruby and Roses sock. I believe it was Plump Rose, which is the 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. And I used the homebody colorway. And I used a US 1, which is a 2.25 millimeter needle. If you're new around here, I am a cuff down knitter. So I use a US 1, a 9-inch circular needle. I cast on 64 stitches. I do roughly about an inch of 2x2 ribbing, and then from the top down to where I start my heel is typically 7 inches. For this one, I had a disaster with winding the skein of yarn with my winder. It wasn't the yarn, it really was user error. So I opted to do 6 inches on these just to ensure that I wouldn't be playing yarn chicken for the amount of yarn that I had. I believe a skein of this yarn has roughly about 400, maybe 437 yards on it. I don't remember, and I don't have the tag. And I was working with about 85% of the skein. So I knew that I wouldn't need the whole skein. I never need a full skein of yarn to make a pair of socks. But just to err on the side of caution, I did have plenty of yarn. I did not need to save that tangled mess in order to, in case I ran out. I did not run out. So they are officially done. So they are going in my sock drawer. So I'm pretty excited to have these finished and off the needles. The last time we chatted, I had just finished a DK weight pair of socks from my Halloween countdown sock sets, and I had finished book number 2 in that. I have set aside that Halloween yarn. I still have 2 more weeks to work through, but I've kind of set them aside for now because you may remember that I had a skein or sock set from Frogget Yarns in their Christmas colorway, the North Pole Book Club. This was a sock set that was kind of pink in tones for Christmas colors, and I was getting ready to go on a knitting retreat that was being hosted by my knitting guild, and I did indeed cast on my sock. So I knew that I was leaving Friday morning to drop my dogs off at their rover sitter, and then heading to pick up my mom, and then going on this knitting retreat. So Thursday night with my knitting group, I cast on a sock thinking, oh, then I'll have a really easy sock to work on. Did I work on these? No. I did most of this leg that Thursday night. And then while on the retreat, I did manage to put a few rows on my One Love Mystery Knit Along with Joji Locatelli. I don't have that with me today. I really didn't make it very far. I am through clue 1. I had started Clue 2. I had set it down right before Clue 2 because I got in the midst of Advent knitting. Well, not Advent knitting, but getting Advents packaged and out the door, and then kind of clearing out the hurricane that was my house. Most dyers could probably tell you, when we go to package up and get Advents ready, it kind of explodes all over our house. Like, I have a massive dining room table, and those mini skeins take up practically the whole entire thing. Then you've got stacks of boxes that are going to the post office, stacks of boxes that are going to UPS. Then you've got stacks of boxes labeled for, what they are in regards to extras. So I really kind of got lost in the sea of that. So I will probably pick that up again shortly, but I haven't in a few weeks. But as you can see, I did finish this sock that I cast on by before my retreat. I didn't knit on this, I don't think, at all during my retreat. I think I worked on this when I got back, and I've actually finished its second one. I love these. I love this colorway. I think this is a pretty popular color for them this year. I love a good DK weight sock. There's just something really cozy about them. They're great for when you're just kicking around the house. They're great to fit into boots, particularly like snow boots, hiking boots. There's just something extra squishy in a good pair of DK weight socks. So these are done. Again, this colorway is the North Pole Book Club. I will provide a link down below to their shop if you want to get yourself one of these sock sets. They do have it in fingering. They do have a gorgeous, more traditional Christmas colorway as well in a sock set. And then on December 1st, they have a December book box that's popping up, and Tasha has knit up a sample sock in that, and it's beautiful. And you can get that yarn even if you don't want the whole entire book box, but you like that colorway. So I'll get you links to their shop so you can peruse that as well. So again, North Pole Book Club, and I did the Merino DK. Their Merino DK, this is 100% superwash, but the mini has the nylon in it for your heels and toes if you want. My other finished object is also socks. I'm telling y'all, I went on a sock tear for the last couple of weeks. I think it's been about a month ago, but part of my fall knitting plans was to get the last of my 2024 Advent socks off the needles. I had a pair from the Cozy Knitter, and I had knit all the way down 13 stripes, and I just set them aside. I didn't do the heels, and I hadn't done the feet. So this past weekend, I pulled these out, and I was like, I was working them in tandem. So I was like, this is 2 sock needles from last Christmas that I kind of need for this year. Because though I didn't get the Cozy Knitter stripy sock countdown, I do always get Freckled Whimsy, and this year I also got Woolens and Nosh, but I did discover that my Woolens and Nosh is a DK weight, so apparently I wanted something a little different with the first go round with them. So as you can see, this past weekend I really tore through getting these done. I continued to work in them in tandem, where I did a heel, I did the other heel. I picked up the gusset stitches, picked up the gusset stitches on the other one, and then I worked the foot on one, worked the foot on the other, then did a toe on one, did the toe on the other. I will say that is I really enjoy doing socks like that. So even if you have a sock set, you could split the main skein in half, like a regular sock set in half, and work them in tandem as well. I really enjoy it. I'm happy to have these off the needles. These are going in my Christmas sock box because they are a little Christmassy, I think. And I probably wouldn't wear these like as part of my everyday knit socks, particularly because of the white toes and heels. I'm not a fan of white toes and heels. I'm really hard on socks. I have dogs, so though I vacuum and mop pretty darn frequently, I feel like there's always the opportunity for white to just get a little dingier than normal. So again, this is US 1, 2.25 millimeter. This is 7 inches, 7-inch leg. I still have a little bit of both of these skeins left. I've just kind of stuck them away. I have, self-striping leftovers, even though I try my hardest to get through them because I am cuffed down. I never end up using a whole skein like those that are on Team Toe Up. And that's everything for finished objects. So now let's talk about my works in progress. I finished all these socks. I had 6 sock needles in my little motions pouch. And I thought, yeah, I got my little 9-inch circular. So I've got 5 here because I had 6 and I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is 3 pairs of socks that I could work in tandem in December. But that left me with no socks to work on. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have more of these guys. I probably have 15 of these suckers floating around my house. But that kind of left me with, if I decided to just leave the 6 needles empty, that kind of left me in a position where I didn't have a sock to work on. And like this morning, I knew that I had a coffee date with some of my coworkers, and I thought, what am I going to knit on while I'm sitting there, chatting with my coworkers? So, because all of my other projects, I need like my iPad for Knit Companion, and I didn't want to be that distracted by my knitting. I really just wanted something that I could go round and round on, and I didn't really need to look at. So I had this sample that had been hanging in the truck. This is an old Cabana Club colorway of mine. My Cabana Club was a monthly sock subscription where every year I had a different theme. It usually revolved around music. This was the year that I did Disney songs. So this one was Down in New Orleans for The Princess and the Frog. And I had several extras. So this was hanging up in my mobile yarn truck, and I don't have any more of this. So it was time to pull it down and work on its mate. So I did indeed, I want to say Sunday night. Today is Tuesday. I'm recording early because of Thanksgiving. I cast on its mate, and then I managed to get through the heel. I did pick up gusset stitches and start this. So I was decreasing the gusset while I was there. You can see I didn't get very much knit over coffee, but I got a fair amount, and so I think I can finish this sock probably over Thanksgiving break. I don't anticipate much of anything going on. My husband and I are going to my parents' house for Thanksgiving. It is just my parents, my sister, my husband, and myself. So nice, quiet Thanksgiving. And then the rest of the time, I'm really hoping to just have quiet days at home. My Christmas decorations are up. Last Saturday, I made a point of getting all my Christmas shopping done. So outside of maybe like stocking stuffers, everything is done for me. I mean, I still have to wrap everything, but the shopping itself is done. So I will have plenty of time to sit and watch Christmas movies and knit. So this should definitely be done before the end of November, which will allow me to get that sixth needle back in order to start my bent knitting. The other project that you haven't seen in a while, but I spent maybe Sunday or the last couple nights is definitely Sunday night. I wanted something to work on, but I didn't necessarily want to work on my sock because I was afraid if I worked on my sock while I was sitting and knitting with friends online, that I would finish that sock and again not have anything to work on today while I was sitting in the bakery having coffee and breakfast with coworkers. So I pulled out my Jaunty Shawl. You might remember that I am using a colorway from one of my advents last year. It was the Tortured Poets department. All the colorways were themed after the songs from that album. And then the large skein in that box was the Tortured Poets department. So this is like a mauvey pink with some really pale speckling. And I happen to have 3 skeins that I had left over for myself. This is in my Talbot DK, which is 75% superwash merino, 15% nylon. And so I really liked the idea of the Jaunty Shawl, that you could use it in any kind of weight. I had these 3 skeins of DK weight, and I thought, oh, well, this will be perfect. I can use all 3 skeins in the project. And to me, this is kind of a neutral pink. Like, it's not bright pink, it's not baby pink, it's not bubblegum pink. That mauve really feels more like a neutral to me. And so the last time I saw you guys, this is a half fisherman's rib shawl. So it is very squishy. And yeah, this is one evening for a couple of hours that I worked on this. And then I did work on my sock, maybe, like, I think that's when I picked up my gusset stitches. So not a ton of progress. This is still my first skein, so I've definitely got a ways to go, but it is an 8-row repeat in the pattern. Most of it is just simple knitting. There's a few rows of the half fisherman's rib thrown in the mix. It's just a really nice pattern that doesn't require a ton of attention, though I don't have it memorized. I probably had it slightly memorized when I first started it, because I did all of that pretty much in 1 or 2 sittings. And then I set it down for weeks. So I think this is going to make for really nice knitting this weekend. I'm excited to kind of pick it up and maybe work on it over the next week or so before December hits. And that brings me to my Fleetwood sweater. Now, if you've been around here for a while, you know that I started this earlier in the fall. Like, I think for summer knitting, I had picked the Geddy Tee and the Fleetwood sweater. I finished my Geddy Tee. It is on the truck. It is beautiful. But when I started the Geddy Tee, that has the crocheted granny squares on the shoulders. I went ahead and did the 9 squares that I needed for my Fleetwood sweater because the squares were going to be identical. And so you can see that the sweater itself is done. The only thing that I had left is sleeves. And so I had picked up my sleeves and then I did a few inches and then I stopped. Like, I think I just kind of petered out a little bit, and it was still hot, and I just didn't want the weight of the sweater in my lap. And not that I was bored, but I just didn't want to focus on decreases. So I did pick this up last night and start working on my sleeves. And while sitting and knitting with friends online, I managed to get all of my decreases done. I now just have a few more inches to do, and then I start the cuff. The cuff is folded over just like the neck. So it will be something like 4 inches of 2x2 ribbing for a while. But I do have to get a few more inches done, and then I can pick up the other sleeve. Would I love to get this done before December starts? Absolutely. We have now reached a point where I could realistically wear this. My knitting guild has its annual holiday dinner. I think it's December 1st or 2nd, whatever that first Tuesday of December is. And so I would love to have this done by then, but I'm not putting that pressure on myself. I have other beautiful sweaters I could wear instead, but I would love to start wearing this, which I knew would be the case. And I think that's motivation for me to go ahead and knock out these sleeves. Maybe even over this Thanksgiving break. That would be really good. The squares were knit with my Rising Tide Fiber Co. Calvert DK, which is 100% superwash merino. But then in order for the gauge of the crochet squares to match the gauge of the actual sweater, she has you use worsted weight. And I am using my Calvert worsted, which is 100% superwash merino. And this is the Come Sail Away colorway. This sweater is knit on a US 8, which is a 5mm needle. I'm kind of obsessed. I forgot to mention the Fleetwood Sweater, the Geddy Tee. They're all by Tanis Lavelli of Tanis Fiber Arts. I'm kind of obsessed with her patterns that are part crochet, part knitting. I think it takes the granny square and just elevates it a little bit. I know her Jethro cardigan, I think that's probably her most popular pattern that uses granny squares, where I think it's roughly about 36 granny squares that completely take up the body of this, the front panel is the entire back. It might be a different amount of squares depending upon size, but I think I looked for my size and it was about 36 squares. And then you knit the sleeves and, the hem, the ribbed hem, the ribbed button bands. That one's really popular. I don't know if I have it in me to do that many squares. My last whip is actually part of my life update. So I'll share that in a little bit. But now let's talk about shop news. If you are still looking for an advent, my 24-day advents, they're gone. I do not have any more of those. I didn't have very many, but I gave my newsletter subscribers first dibs. They pretty much all flew out the door that same night. Like, people purchased them the next morning. I had them at the post office. All that I have left, I have 4, as of recording this, I have 4 sock set advents. One is for the love of coffee. One is for the love of tea. One is for the love of plants, and one is for the love of stories. Now, some of these might be micro sock sets, meaning you get a 50-gram skein plus the 20-gram mini. So some people make shorty socks with them. I wear a size 7.5, sometimes an 8, and I can get a full pair of socks out of that 70 grams of yarn. If you know that you don't use a whole entire cake of yarn, maybe go grab that cake from an old pair of socks that you made, weigh it, and see how many grams you have. And I bet you probably have quite a bit if you wear a similar shoe size. So a 70-gram sock set, you can totally get a full pair of socks out of. There might be one of them I know the Stories is 100 grams. I think one of them I think is a DK weight. I think. I don't remember. But they're on the website. Those four. If you order it, I usually get them out the next day because I just want to hurry up and get them in the mail so they get to you. In other news, I have just found out and paid my vendor booth fees, but at the end of January, Florida, I am coming for you. I am going to be at the Sunkissed Fiber Festival in Dover, Florida. It's about 20 minutes outside of Tampa. I want to say it's January. It's around the 24th, 25th, 26th. It's a 2-day event. I am not bringing the mobile trailer for this destination. It is a 14-hour trip with no stops, just in my truck when I map it out with GPS. So for me to pull a trailer, the trailer is 20 feet long. That's going to really burn a lot of fuel. So I would probably have to stop 2 or 3 times, and it would probably take me closer to probably 18. Like, it will add hours to my trip. And just logistically, this is a first year event. And, at the end of January, we sometimes, a lot of times, are getting snow here in Maryland. So I just didn't want a chance going through Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina with potentially some yucky roads pulling the trailer. So I may not even be taking my own vehicle. I may just rent a vehicle and load it up, and I have an actual 10 by 10 booth at the event. I'm super excited to be coming. I have friends of mine that will be vending down there that I've never actually met in person. So because they do different events than I do. So I'm really excited for this event. I will link it down below. So that if you want to get out of winter weather and take a trip to Florida at the end of January, let's go. Life update. So that leads me into a life update. So for my regular viewers, you may remember that I said that I was going on a knitting retreat with my knitting guild, and this was only going to be the second retreat I've ever been on in my life. The first retreat that I went on went rather poorly, though I think my mom enjoyed it because she's very extroverted, very social. I know that the learning atmosphere at that event was really frustrating, and we didn't have a very good teacher who was teaching brioche, and it was just not a good experience. And I am very introverted, so I have trouble being around people for really extended periods of time, without some downtime. And I was curious to see how this one was going to go. We had a jam-packed retreat. We got there early afternoon, checked in. My mom had injured her knee, so I was actually kind of daughter/nurse. I didn't need to be. She probably would have preferred if I hadn't, but I really wanted her to have a good time, but not put extra pressure on this knee that she had injured and was already going to be going to the orthopedic on Monday. And if you know my mom or worried about my mom, at this point, we're still waiting on MRI results. It kind of sounded like maybe she tore an ACL or did something to a tendon. So I picked her up. She had a walker that had, the type of walker that has a seat. So it made life a little bit easier for just getting her from point A to point B throughout the retreat center. Our instructor was Ann Weaver, and the idea was to learn steeking. I had never steeked anything. My mom had steeked socks, so she kind of already knew how to, she didn't necessarily have the intimidation of steeking her own knitting. but a sock is a lot different than a sweater. So we got there Friday, and probably, well, neither one of us had eaten anything. So I did stop kind of, I don't know, 20 minutes away at a Panera. We had lunch. Then we got to the retreat center. Someone came out to kind of greet us and then kind of escorted her in. And then I unloaded the vehicle. We got checked into our room. And then it was pretty low key that Friday afternoon and evening. Like, people had brought snacks to share. There was kind of like this bingo game everyone was playing. People were sitting around and knitting. Really low key, low stakes. So that was really nice. But we got up early Saturday morning, had breakfast. Oh, we did go to dinner Friday night. They did feed us Friday night. And we had been told that the food at this retreat center was awful. I guess the prior year it had been really bad. Like, maybe the kitchen like messed up all weekend. So we didn't really know what to expect, because every time I asked someone, what do you mean by the food is bad? To me, that it's pretty subjective. But no one could really tell me what was so bad about it. It turned out to be really good. Did they do everything perfect? No, of course not. But it was cafeteria style. They had gluten-free things for people who had that dietary need. I felt like there were always a couple of different vegetables each meal. There was a salad bar. So they had plenty of beverage choices. Even for coffee, there were flavored creamers. So I was really happy and pleased with the food. I had no complaints. But so Saturday, we get up early, we get showered, and then, we get showered, then we go have breakfast. I had my mom go to the classroom. I went back to our room, got our stuff, got her situated towards the back so her walker wouldn't be in the way. And then the first part of the morning, the idea was you could buy a thrifted sweater directly from Ann Weaver. Surprisingly, there were a lot of us that actually brought our own sweaters to steek. But the idea behind steeking a thrifted sweater is you have no emotional attachment to the sweater because you haven't put in hours upon hours of knitting with it. And that was initially what I was going to do for myself. And then I realized that in storage, I had a sweater, the very first sweater I had ever knit. It was knit using 3 different colors of this Imperial Yarns Aran. And I had Ravelry. In my Ravelry stash, I knew that I had a full skein of the blue and I had a full skein of this light purple. I didn't have any of the dark purple. And so what I don't think I knew at the time, because I was a brand new knitter, like I'd only been knitting, I want to say for maybe a year or two. I had never really finished a whole lot of anything except for maybe a couple of shawls, some hats, a lot of casting on, but not a lot of finishing. But I was part of this online community on Ravelry called Yarn Box. It was a subscription, one of the very first subscription boxes you could get. And I met a ton of people in the online forum for Yarn Box. And there was a bunch of us that decided to knit this pattern called $5 in Paris. And so I thought, oh, I'll just order additional skeins of this yarn from Yarn Box, and I'm going to knit this sweater, but I don't want to knit it in one color. I don't want a sweater. What do I want a heavy Aran weight sweater in short sleeves for? Like, that doesn't make any sense for me. But it has this boat neck. And what I didn't realize at the time, because I'd never made a garment, I didn't know about fit, was that though I picked a size that would fit my body, I didn't take into account ease. And so I didn't take into account that ribbing. Mine, it was like all the way out to here. So now I'm going to have straps showing, and it just didn't, like, it fit, but the giant boat neck really perturbed me. So I never wore this sweater. I decided to steek this sweater because it was made of 100% Rambouillet non-superwash, which non-superwash was what you should do. So here's a picture of my sweater before. It's not a great picture. It's not very good with color accuracy because I don't think back then I really cared because I was just putting it in my Ravelry. So I knew that I could steek this sweater, and since I don't wear it, I had never worn it, I didn't care. And I had always thought about just ripping it out, like frogging the entire sweater and making something else. But I never got around to it because it's Aran weight. So I went to storage. I pulled out the sweater. I quickly found the yarn in my deep stash, and I just took it with me and thought I can still buy a thrifted sweater if I find something that I like, or I can use this one. I did find a sweater for my mom to steek. I have a feeling she's going to give it to me because I really like it. I wound us each a skein of non-superwash fingering to use for the crochet or needlepoint steek lines. And so I knew that this would contrast with blues and purples. We ended up picking a yellow sweater for my mom, so this wasn't the best color to pick for her steeking hers, but I did successfully steek my sweater. Now, you might notice that I did some sweater surgery. So I talked to Anne before I steeked anything. Like, I put in my crocheted bands, and I said, hey, here's the deal. This sweater never fit right because we've got this ridiculous boat neck. I'm thinking that I need to do some sweater surgery and salvage the yarn for the neck because I have one skein of the navy, and I don't know if that's enough to do my button bands and also go back and do the collar. So she was like, yeah, let's take the neck off. And surprisingly, other people opted to cut the necks off of their thrifted sweaters so that they could then do the necklines in the same color that they were doing their button bands. So I managed to cut this. I was surprised. It started out a little tedious because as a new knitter, I had, split a stitch here or there. But surprisingly, I managed to pick up all my stitches. I basically used try-on tubing, mine are by barber cord, and I did my crochet steek lines, and I inserted my try-on tubing that morning before we went to lunch. And then I steeped it before lunch. Like, I actually cut it because once I got the try-on tubing in, I was able to go ahead and cut it without having removed the neck yet. Went to lunch, came back. I could already feel, like, from a mental standpoint that I was kind of hitting a wall, kind of at my capacity for being around people. But persevered. My mom and one of our friends were at the same table with me, so they were all like constantly. So at one point, I did go out into the hallway. There were beautiful seating areas out there. There was a lot of large windows, so I was able to sit down with all that natural light and unpick. And eventually, after I cut off my neckband, I was able to then unravel the ribbing. It started out like it had almost kind of felted in places, but once I got it going, then I was able to do it. And then I went back and I did my button bands. Now, I did give myself a pretty wide swath of fabric to cut in between. So Anne had ribbon there. I didn't find anything that I particularly liked, but so I do need to go to Michael's or get online and see if I can just find some nice ribbing to kind of tack this down and just make it a little nicer, not see the yellow. So this is a whip of mine. I do need to go back and redo this neck, but I need to do it on a smaller needle. This sweater was done on a US 9 with all the ribbing on a US 8. So I will probably go down a needle size and then I will need to kind of slowly decrease in on that neckline if I want it to actually come up. I've got plenty of yarn to work with. So this is something that is kind of on my to-do list because if for no other reason, I want this try-on tubing back. I want to be able to put it away. I don't necessarily want this sweater to continue to sit for another decade or more before I revisit it because it literally has been just sitting around for well over 10 years now because it didn't fit and I didn't know what I was doing back then. Obviously, I don't have that problem anymore. So I'm really happy. Because I had given myself a nice wide swath of fabric to cut in between, I'm really pleased with steeking. Steeking was not at all as scary as I thought it would be. I think I would totally do a colorwork sweater and be okay with cutting it. My mom cut hers no problem and had started the detailing. After we finished all of that, on Saturday at the retreat, we had a few hours to kind of relax. My mom and I went back to our room, kind of relaxed. I think we called my dad, just kind of checked in with family. And then we went to dinner. Dinner was lovely. My mom and I tried every meal to sit with different people so that there were 29 of us there. So that was kind of nice to, for the most part, always be sitting with different people and chatting over meals, which is something I kind of liked because I don't always like to get outside the box. I like to stay in my comfort zone as an introvert. So that was kind of a really nice exercise for me because over a meal, there's not a whole lot of pressure for engaging conversation. And then Saturday night, there was a fashion show that I was in charge of music for. There was like a white elephant type of thing, and something else. Like it was a really long day. And then we went back to the room. We pretty much crashed. And then we were up the next morning for breakfast and then we left. So it felt like everything was crammed into Saturday. If I was planning it, I probably would have maybe had one workshop on Friday night, one on Saturday morning, or done like the fashion show. I would have just broken things up. I didn't mind the 2 workshop sessions being like 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon type of thing. But everything else Saturday was really hard. Like I came home on Sunday and could not stay awake. Like I didn't sleep that well because it's a hotel. But I crashed. Like, I took a nap, and I'm not a napper, and I went to bed early, and it felt like I did nothing but sleep on Sunday after I picked up my dogs and got them home and settled. That brings me to, what am I reading? So I have slowed down on my reading since I am not doing a ton of driving back and forth to festivals. I'm not in, packaging up advents. Things are definitely starting to kind of slow down a little bit on the home front. So I'm not spending a ton of time reading, but still a fair amount. One of the books that I have finished is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. And I think this is far enough back that I don't really remember the premise of this, but I was working my way through Alice Feeney books. My sister and I are going to an author event in January, and I really wanted to, and the author is Alice Feeney, and so I am a fan of her books, but I hadn't read everything in her backlist, and so this was the last book that I needed to check off my list. I'm glad I read it. It's not one of the books that stands out to me. It's not one of my favorites, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. I also read The School for Good Mothers. This is by Jessamine Chan. This apparently was a read with Jenna book pick. I have owned this book. I've had it on my shelves since it came out, and I just never got around to picking it up to read it. I did tag team this one between reading the hardcover book and listening to it. The audio was great. I enjoyed the narrator. This book fell a little flat for me. I expected a little bit more from it, and it just didn't hit for me. We're essentially following a mom, Frida. And Frida, her parents are Chinese immigrants. It feels like this is well into the future. It almost feels like Handmaid's Tale-esque, where there's a lot of like societal big brother, keeping an eye on you type of thing. And she leaves her daughter who's napping, like she leaves the house for something minor. Like she's only gone for a few minutes. And it's the type of situation where should she have left her daughter, quietly napping or whatever and run to it's a little more than just like running to the mailbox type of thing, but it's one of those gray areas where there are definitely moms that would be comfortable like running across the street type of thing, and leaving their child alone, and others who are not comfortable with that. Like it's definitely what she did falls in that gray area. And so this is a society where she's now been flagged as a bad mother. So she has to go away to this school and learn how to become a good mother. In the interim, her daughter is then living with her ex-husband and his girlfriend. There is a lot going on in this book because we're looking at the Chinese immigrant position. We're looking at this whole judgment of good mom versus bad mom. And so you're not only following her story, but you're getting to kind of hear about some of the stories of the other women who are in this school. And again, the overarching theme of just sort of living in like what feels like Handmaid's Tale type of government, and hence why we have schools for mothers. I think they could have done a better job with the storyline. There were times where I didn't feel sorry for this mother, and then there were times that I would. But some of her thoughts, her inner dialogue, I just was like, come on. Like felt like though she was progressing in the school, her inner dialogue wasn't changing. Not until we got much farther towards the end. So I didn't think it was a bad book. I think I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads and Storygraph. Um, I just had higher hopes for it, and that's on me, not on the author. I also recently finished The Strawberry Patch Pancake House by Laurie Gilmore. This is book number 4 in the Dream Harbor series. She just had a 5th book release this past month called The Gingerbread House Bakery, I think. Don't quote me. It's something in that Dream Harbor town. The Strawberry Patch Pancake House, I actually kind of enjoyed a lot of that main storyline being a single dad thrusted into fatherhood with a small child he didn't know existed. I don't know how I feel about the whole single dad nanny thing, but it did work. I mean, the growth of the characters worked for me. In the end, I enjoyed it. It is not as spicy as, say, some of her other books, I didn't think. She's got a couple. Is it book number 2 or book number 3? One of them was a lot spicier than the first. This is a series that's kind of hit or miss for people. It is Hallmarky-esque, meaning it can feel a little like a Hallmark Channel romance movie. But I will say the first book is probably one of the weakest in the series. I want to say book 2. It's either book 2 or 3. I think it's book 3, the Christmas Tree Farm one. That one I really enjoyed. This one, again, I enjoyed it. It was fun. It wasn't incredibly spicy for her. I'm interested in reading The Gingerbread House, particularly if I can get the audio. I think it would be fun to listen to this holiday season. What I'm currently reading, I am working on an advanced reader's copy of Books and Bewitchment by Isla Jewell. What was it? I didn't write it down, but I'm pretty sure that's who the author is. I started this one a few weeks ago. In fact, I had just started it shortly before I went on my knitting retreat. I didn't get a ton of reading done on that retreat because, again, Saturday night, I was just exhausted. This book has proven to be really, really funny in the fact that this girl has inherited, this property from her grandmother that she's never met. And there is just a scene in this that was laugh out loud funny. Like, I was telling my mom all about it after I had just read it because it has to do with this girl's grandmother, and it is hysterical. I think I have to have this book read by the end of December, but I think it comes out in February. It is really quite comical, particularly between granddaughter and grandmother. In this book, I only have a couple more hours. According to my Kindle, I only have a couple more hours. So I'm hoping to finish it over this holiday weekend so that I can jump into something new. But yeah, Books and Bewitchment, really funny, cute little witch story. This granddaughter doesn't even know she's a witch. There's a love interest that's from a rival family. Great stuff. The other book that I am currently reading is The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. This is one that came through with my library. I really enjoy Alex E. Harrow books. There is usually some kind of retelling of a fairy tale. There's some sort of spin on the story. But this one has to do with this looping timeline where our love interests they love each other, but they just keep killing each other in every time loop that they're in. And I want to say about 25% through this book, and it's just when I think I'm gonna just DNF it, I'm not gonna finish it, then something happens and keeps me my interest a little bit piqued. I can't figure out if it's the narration that's losing my interest or if it's the storyline is just taking too many dips and lulls for me. But as of right now, I am continuing to push through. And that's all I've got for this week. I think this is probably a pretty lengthy episode. I would love to know, what are you doing this Thanksgiving break? I think a lot of us here in the United States who are celebrating Thanksgiving, a lot of us have Thanksgiving off and Friday off, as long as you're not in some sort of typically like healthcare or civil servant position. I could be wrong. Does everybody have Black Friday off? I feel like a lot of people do, unless you work in like a doctor's office, law enforcement. What is everybody doing during their Thanksgiving weekend, even if you don't have Friday off? What are you planning on doing? Are you running out to the stores to go shopping? Are you planning on having a nice quiet time at home and doing a lot of knitting or crocheting? Are you going to be working on Christmas gifts? What are you working on? And if you don't have any thoughts, I would love for you to give me a turkey emoji to let me know that you made it through this whole entire episode. And if you like this kind of content, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, share the video with a friend who you think might also enjoy it. And until next time, friends, happy knitting, happy reading.